I was told to stay upstairs on Thanksgiving in my own house. 30 guests laughed below without me. But they forgot one simple truth. This house still carries my name. And that night, everything changed forever. I am Dorothy Mae Whitfield, 72 years old. I live in Concord, Massachusetts, in my family home, a Victorian house, 130 years old. 4 generations have kept Thanksgiving alive within these walls. The tall windows rattle when the November wind blows. The wooden staircase creaks like an old violin. The fireplace stones were placed by my grandfather's hands. Every room carries whispers of time and tradition. For 45 years, I was the keeper of Thanksgiving. It began when I was 27, newly married. Harold, my husband, smiled as I roasted my first turkey. I feared it would be dry, tough, disappointing, but my father declared it the best bird ever. From that year, the menu became a sacred ritual. A 20-pound turkey rubbed with butter, sage, and thyme, stuffing with sausage, celery, onions, and cornbread cubes, cranberry sauce simmered with orange zest and cinnamon, 3 pies cooling on the counter, pumpkin, pecan, apple. It wasn't just food. It was family. It was tradition stitched into lace tablecloths. It was silver polished until it reflected candlelight. It was children laughing near the fireplace waiting for pie. Every Thanksgiving proved one truth. No matter how far we wandered, we returned home. Last year, everything changed. Harold, my partner of nearly 50 years, passed away. A quiet winter morning, and suddenly, silence filled the house. The laughter of decades faded into unbearable emptiness. That Thanksgiving, we lit a candle for him. Michael, our only son, squeezed my hand tightly. "Mom will keep the tradition alive." Always, he said. His promise carried me through 12 months of grief. Michael is 42 now, a Boston lawyer, sharp-focused, always carrying his work like a burden. He has little time, but he is my world. When he married Brittany last year, I truly tried to welcome her into this family. She is young, radiant, a star in her own right, an influencer, her followers hanging on her every post. She walks like a spotlight, follows her everywhere. But with me, her eyes were always distant, cold. Still, I hoped time might soften the distance between us. This autumn, as leaves turned gold and air grew sharp, I pinned my hopes once more on Thanksgiving. I opened the cedar chest, pulled out lace tablecloths. I polished the silver, each piece reflecting my face. I opened my mother's recipe box, yellowed with age. Every card written in her hand, flour-stained corners. I whispered, "This year tradition will stay alive." I imagined Michael carving the turkey proudly, Brittany beside him, smiling despite her distance. Family neighbors' laughter filling every corner again. It was enough to keep me strong through lonely nights, because tradition is more than memory. It is continuity. It is proof that some things outlast sorrow. That family can return even after loss. On the first Saturday of November, I heard tires. Michael's car pulled into the gravel driveway. I peeked through lace curtains, my heart quickening. He was home, but he wasn't alone. Brittany stepped out, first her red coat flashing. Her heels clicked against the old stone walkway. In her hand, an iPad gleamed in the sunlight. Her smile looked rehearsed, like a camera was watching. Michael followed, shoulders heavy, face unreadable. I opened the door, joy already rising inside me. Maybe they would discuss this year's dinner together. Maybe Brittany would ask for a family recipe. I was ready to compromise as long as it lasted. I welcomed them inside. The air smelled of cider and cinnamon sticks. Brittany brushed past me, glancing at the parlor walls. Her eyes caught on the lace curtains, the portraits. A faint smirk curved her lips, quickly hidden. Michael hugged me briefly, distracted, distant. I pushed the ache aside, smiling brightly. "Shall we plan Thanksgiving?" I asked warmly. Brittany tapped her iPad eyes, glowing. "Actually, Dorothy, we've already planned something spectacular." Her voice carried certainty like a hostess in command. 30 guests, a chef, a photographer, an event planner. Her words hit me harder than November's cold wind. Thanksgiving was coming, but not the way I had ever known it. Brittany's heels clicked against the hardwood floor. She moved through my house like she owned it. Michael followed, shoulders hunched, silent as always. I led them to the dining room. The mahogany table gleamed after my morning polish. Lace curtains swayed as the November wind pushed. I gestured proudly at the silver centerpiece. Your grandmother's candlesticks, I whispered to Michael. They have shone every Thanksgiving since 1945. Brittany's eyes swept the table. Her lips curved in a faint smile. It is quaint, she said, tapping her iPad. She lifted an image on the glowing screen. Bright lights filled the photo. Minimalist decor, sharp and glossy. A white and gold table for 30. Influencers holding champagne glasses in filtered perfection. This is what I envision this year. Her voice rang like a commercial pitch. Modern chic streamed live, unforgettable. Michael nodded, avoiding my eyes. My stomach tightened into a painful knot. I forced my voice steady. Thanksgiving is family. It is tradition. It is us. Brittany laughed softly, not cruel, but sharp. Dorothy, no one cares about tradition anymore. People want an experience worth sharing online. Michael cleared his throat, still avoiding me. She is right, Mom. This could help networking clients her brand. It makes sense for us both. I stared at him, my only son, my Harold's boy, speaking like a stranger in my home. Brittany tapped her screen again. 30 guests, mostly young professionals. Chef Brandon, very trendy, runs a Boston pop-up. Photographer Zoe specialized in lifestyle shoots. An event planner to stage the whole house. Her smile widened with confidence. It will be unforgettable. People will talk for weeks. I swallowed, throat dry like dust. And what about family? Silence filled the room. Brittany tilted her head slightly. Family is welcome, but this is about image, too. Michael shifted uncomfortably. Mom, we will still have dinner, just in a different way. The words stung like icy needles, as if decades of tradition were useless software. I tried again softly. Your father and I kept this house alive. We welcome neighbors, soldiers, immigrants at this table. Thanksgiving here is older than both of you. Brittany's gaze softened for a moment, then steel returned to her eyes. It is time to move forward now. You cannot stay stuck in the past. Her words hung like smoke in the parlor. Michael finally looked at me with guilt. His eyes flickered and darted away again. I held my breath, waiting for him, to defend me, to remember Harold's candle at the table. But nothing came from his lips. Brittany spoke again with finality. We need space for filming. The lace tablecloths are too old-fashioned. The silverware is lovely but distracting. We will replace them with something sleeker. Her words cut deeper than a blade. Those silver pieces were my mother's pride. She polished them every year until she passed. I whispered into the silence. This is my house, my Thanksgiving. Michael's voice came low, almost pleading. Mom, please do not make this harder. It is just one day. Let Brittany try. I stared at him in disbelief. One day is all tradition ever needed. One day kept this family whole for centuries. Brittany packed her iPad with a brisk smile. Great, so we are all set then. She kissed Michael's cheek and left. See you next week, Dorothy. They left as quickly as they came. The house sank back into heavy silence. I stood in the dining room, trembling. The polished silver reflected my weary face. Not my face as I knew it, but the face of a stranger erased slowly. That night I sat by the fireplace. The flames flickered, low shadows stretched long. I held Harold's photograph on my lap. His eyes seemed to ask a question. Would you let this go, Dorothy? Would you let them take Thanksgiving away? Tears burned hot against my cheeks. I whispered to him in the silence. I do not know, Harold. I just do not know. I picked up the phone with shaking hands. I dialed my sister Ruth in Vermont. Her voice was warm as she answered. Dorothy, are you ready for the holiday? I hesitated before the truth broke free. Ruth, they are taking it from me. They want 30 strangers in our house. They want me to disappear upstairs. Michael agreed with her. He chose her plan. Her voice hardened instantly with fire. Dorothy Mae Whitfield, do not you dare cry. That house is yours. That tradition is yours. Do not let them erase your place. I sobbed into the receiver, helpless and small. Ruth's words were fierce, but my heart was glass. When we hung up, Silence pressed heavy again. Only the ticking clock and the dying fire remained. Upstairs, the cedar chest held the lace cloth. The silver waited patiently in their velvet case. The recipe cards slept in the kitchen drawer. Would they ever see light again? Or would this house become a stage, and I a ghost in the rafters above? Thanksgiving was less than 3 weeks away. For the first time in my life, I feared it might not belong to me anymore. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the kitchen. I stood at the counter, hands resting on flour. The silence in the house pressed heavy on me. I had baked pies every November morning. The smell of cinnamon once drew Michael downstairs. He would steal a piece before it cooled. This morning, the counter was empty. No eager footsteps came rushing into the kitchen. Only the clock ticked steady and unforgiving. I reached for my recipe box. My mother's handwriting stared back at me. Pumpkin pie, pecan pie, apple pie, written carefully. I pressed the cards to my chest, whispered into the quiet kitchen. Do these recipes still matter to anyone? Later that week, Michael called briefly. His voice carried distance like static across miles. Mom, we will arrive 2 days early. Brittany wants to prepare the house. Please do not fuss with cooking this year. I tightened my grip on the phone. Cooking was my language of love. Now they wanted me silent, invisible. I said nothing but agreed quietly. Michael sounded relieved when I did. When the call ended, tears blurred my vision. Even my son no longer trusted my traditions. That night, I walked the empty halls. The portraits on the wall stared back at me. My grandmother's eyes seemed stern, unyielding. Would she have allowed this erasure? The staircase groaned under my steps. The chandelier above swayed in the draft. The house felt alive, watching me in silence, as if it too feared being forgotten. The following weekend, Brittany visited again. This time she brought swatches of fabric, bright whites, metallic golds, sleek, modern textures. She spread them across my dining table, covering the lace cloth I had placed there. Look, Dorothy, this will photograph beautifully. She smiled, adjusting the swatches under sunlight. I stared at her manicured hands. They covered the very threads my mother stitched. Brittany noticed my silence and spoke gently. Do not take this personally. This is about growth, about presentation. Her words felt rehearsed like lines in a play. I forced myself to nod, though my chest ached. Later, I overheard her whispering to Michael, Your mother is too fragile for such an event. Better if she stays upstairs resting. Guests will not understand her old-fashioned ways. My heart shattered hearing my own son agree. Yes, you are right, he whispered back. She would be overwhelmed. It is best for her. I pressed my hand against the wall. The paint felt cold against my trembling fingers. How could Michael believe I was fragile? I had carried this house for decades. I had survived loss, grief, and endless winters. That night, I called Ruth again. Her voice roared like a storm across the line. Dorothy, they cannot lock you in your own house. You must stand firm. Do not let them diminish you. I wanted to believe her, but loneliness weighed heavier than her words. After we hung up, I sat by the window. The streets outside lay quiet under bare trees. I saw my reflection faint in the glass, a woman fading year by year, moment by moment. 2 days before Thanksgiving, they arrived. The driveway filled with delivery trucks. Boxes, equipment, lighting rigs poured into my house. Chef Brandon stormed into the kitchen. He waved away my worn wooden spoons. Where are the stainless steel pans, he demanded. This setup is too old, he complained loudly. I tried to explain the oven's quirks. It has baked turkeys perfectly for decades. He dismissed me with a sharp laugh. We are professionals, we know what we need. My kitchen, once my sanctuary, was taken. I backed into the hallway, tears in my eyes. Upstairs, I heard laughter echoing. Brittany's voice carried commands like a director. Place the flowers here. Move that painting out of sight. Replace the old rug with something modern. Each order stripped another piece of me away. My history boxed, stored, hidden from view. Michael followed her, saying little. When our eyes met, he looked away. It felt like betrayal, sharp and cold. He was no longer my ally, my son. He was her partner, her echo, not mine. That night, I sat alone in my room. The noise downstairs throbbed like a distant parade. I held Harold's sweater close to my chest. The fabric smelled faintly of cedar and memory. I whispered into the fabric, "They want me gone, Harold. They want me erased from Thanksgiving. What should I do?" No answer came, only the silence of an old house mourning with me. Thanksgiving morning arrived bright and cold. I woke at dawn out of habit. For decades, this morning meant turkey at sunrise. Instead, the kitchen buzzed with strangers. Chef Brandon barked orders over clattering pans. Photographer Zoe clicked her camera endlessly. Brittany swept through in a sequined dress. She caught sight of me standing in the doorway. "Dorothy, you should rest upstairs. You must save your energy." Energy for what I wanted to ask. But my throat refused to open. I nodded, climbing the stairs slowly. From upstairs, I heard the laughter below, glasses clinking, voices rising in cheer. Cameras flashed, music swelled, heels clicked. My house was alive, but not with family. I sat on the edge of my bed. The sounds below pierced deeper than silence ever could. I was a prisoner in my own home. And for the first time, I wondered, would anyone notice if I never came downstairs again? Thanksgiving morning stretched endlessly above my head. Downstairs, laughter rose like waves crashing against stone. I sat by the window hands folded tightly. Snowflakes drifted across the glass, each one small, perfect, fleeting. They melted before I could count them. I thought of past Thanksgivings, the scent of roasted turkey filling the house, children chasing each other through crowded hallways, Harold carving carefully at the head table. Now silence filled my room. Only the muffled noise below reached me, a hollow echo of joy without meaning. I rose from the bed slowly. My knees creaked like the staircase downstairs. I opened the cedar chest at the footboard. Inside lay folded lace cloths, yellowed recipe cards tied with ribbon, photographs, stacked edges, worn thin. I pulled out one picture, me at 27, flour dust on my face, Michael still in diapers on Harold's lap. I pressed the photo against my chest, whispered into the empty room. Where did that joy go? Where did that family go? A knock sounded at my door. Brittany entered without waiting for reply. Her perfume filled the room instantly. "Dorothy, are you comfortable up here?" She carried a plate with sliced turkey. Gravy had cooled, congealing at the edges. I forced a smile, nodding faintly. She placed the plate on my dresser. "We will bring dessert later," she said. Her tone was kind, but her eyes distant. She looked at her watch, then the door. "We are very busy downstairs," she added. She left before I could respond. The door clicked shut like a lock. I sat staring at the plate. The turkey was pale, flavorless, forgotten. Nothing like the golden birds I once made. My stomach turned. I pushed the plate aside untouched. For the first time in decades, I felt no hunger on Thanksgiving Day. Only emptiness stretched inside me. The hours dragged on relentlessly. Shadows lengthened across the wooden floorboards. I heard music swell from downstairs, glasses clinking, cameras, flashing, voices raised in cheer. I imagined Brittany at the center, Michael at her side smiling politely, my candlesticks hidden in a storage box, my lace cloth folded away in shame. I pressed my hands against my chest. The ache there was sharper than any winter. Night came slowly. The house quieted at last. Doors closed, footsteps faded, laughter dissolved. I stepped into the hallway. The air was cold, still heavy with perfume. I descended the staircase, carefully gripping the railing. The dining room was unrecognizable. Empty glasses littered the mahogany table. Gold napkins crumpled in careless piles. Plates stacked with half-eaten food. My silverware sat crooked on the sideboard. Spots of cranberry stained the polished surface. A wine glass teetered near the edge. The sight pierced me deeper than words. My house had become a stage, then a mess, and I had been locked away above it. I sank into a chair at the table. The wood felt cold beneath my fingertips. I leaned forward, burying my face in my hands. For the first time, despair swallowed me whole. I whispered into the silence. Maybe they are right. Maybe I do not belong anymore. The words tasted bitter, poisonous, but they clung to my tongue anyway. The front door creaked suddenly. Footsteps echoed in the hall. I froze, heart pounding inside my chest. Michael appeared in the doorway. His tie was loosened, his eyes tired. He looked surprised to see me downstairs. "Mom, you should be in bed." His voice was gentle but firm. I shook my head slowly. "This is my house, Michael. My Thanksgiving. My life." He sighed heavily, sitting across from me. "Mom, please try to understand. The world is different now. Brittany is building something important." I stared at him, tears blurring my sight. "Important enough to erase your own mother." Michael flinched but said nothing. The silence between us grew unbearable. He rose, finally placing a hand on my shoulder. "Please rest, Mom. Tomorrow will be better." He left me in the dim dining room. The door clicked shut once more. I was alone again with the wreckage. I sat there for hours. The house groaned with settling wood. The clock ticked loudly in the hall. My thoughts circled endlessly. I had given my life to family. 45 years of meals, laughter, and sacrifice. Now I was invisible in my own home, forgotten, dismissed, locked away upstairs. At that moment, I reached the bottom, deeper than grief, sharper than loneliness, a place where hope flickered and nearly died. But as I sat in the darkness, my eyes fell on the old album nearby. It had been left half open on the sideboard. Inside were photographs of my grandmother. She stood proudly beside soldiers in uniform, a turkey steaming on the long wooden table. I turned the pages slowly, reverently. My mother serving pie to immigrant neighbors. Myself at 27, apron dusted with flour. The weight of those faces steadied me. Generations who had kept this alive. They would not want me erased. They would not want me silent. Something inside me stirred faintly. Not yet strength, but a spark of defiance. I closed the album with trembling hands, whispered to the empty room. Maybe I'm not finished yet. The house slept after the long day. Empty glasses lined the counters, shadows stretched tall. I stayed seated, unwilling to climb upstairs again. The photo album rested under my hands. Its weight felt heavier than polished silver. Generations stared back from the faded pages. I opened again to my grandmother's picture. Her eyes fierce, her posture strong, unyielding. She cooked for soldiers when food was scarce. She never gave up her table. Not to war, not to hardship. She welcomed everyone with dignity intact. I whispered into the quiet. If she could stand, then so can I. I rose from the chair slowly. My knees ached, but a fire stirred inside. I carried the album to the study. The study smelled of old leather and cedar. Stacks of boxes lined the walls, untouched for years. I pulled open a drawer beneath the desk. Inside lay envelopes, contracts, and deeds. Documents Harold once guarded carefully. I slid them out one by one. There it was, crisp and undeniable. The deed to the house, signed in ink. Whitfield passed from generation to generation. My hands trembled holding the paper. This was not just sentiment. This was proof, cold and legal. The house was mine fully and forever. No contract, no influencer party could erase that. I thought of Brittany's smug smile, her voice calling my traditions outdated, her hands covering my mother's lace cloth. Let her think I am powerless. Let her believe I will fade quietly. The truth is written in ink in history. I placed the deed back carefully, but I kept one copy under my pillow, a secret, a shield, a reminder. The next morning, Brittany bustled through the house. Her heels echoed like gavel strikes on wood. Michael trailed her silent, weary, obedient. They barely looked at me at breakfast. "Dorothy, you should rest," Brittany said smoothly. "Today we have meetings with vendors again." I nodded, sipping coffee quietly. Inside, my thoughts sharpened into quiet resolve. After they left the house, sighed deeply. I moved through the room slowly, reverently. I touched the lace folded on the chair. I traced my mother's recipe card again. These were not just objects. They were evidence of continuity of legacy. I whispered to the house itself, "You are mine and I am yours. They cannot rewrite what you hold." That afternoon, Ruth called again. Her voice was stern but worried. "Dorothy, how are you holding up?" I told her about the deed. Her laugh cracked through the phone like thunder. "Well, that is your answer," she said. "Show them who you are. Do not hide in that upstairs room." Her words bolstered me, but fear lingered. Michael was still my son, my heart. Would confronting him break us beyond repair? Ruth's voice softened at last. Sometimes truth must cut to heal. That evening, Michael came upstairs. He knocked gently before entering. "Mom, are you comfortable? Do you need anything?" I studied his tired face. Lines deepened at his temples, his eyes weary. He looked older than his years. "Michael, do you remember Thanksgiving when you were 10? You burned your hand sneaking pie from the oven. Harold carried you while I bandaged it. We laughed even as you cried." Michael's eyes softened, then hardened again. "That was a long time ago, Mom. Things change. People expect different now." I held his gaze firmly. "Some things do not change. This house does not change, and neither does the truth it holds." He frowned, shifting uneasily. "What truth, Mom?" I did not answer. Not yet. The time had not come. That night, I could not sleep. The deed lay under my pillow, steady. I reached for it in the dark. The paper crinkled softly under my touch. I closed my eyes and saw Harold. He smiled, nodding as if giving permission. The house groaned in the winter wind. The beams above creaked, the windows rattled. But I felt no fear anymore. Something had shifted inside me. I was no longer only grieving, I was preparing. The next morning, Brittany gathered friends at the door. She introduced them with dramatic flair. Photographer Zoe with her camera flashing. Planner Olivia with her clipboard full of notes. They swept into the dining room swiftly. Chairs were moved, paintings taken down. My grandmother's portrait removed from the wall. I stepped forward before they reached the candlesticks. "Those stay," I said clearly. My voice echoed sharper than expected. Brittany blinked, surprised at my firmness. "We just thought it might not fit," she began. "It fits," I said again, and I did not move. For a moment, silence stretched uncomfortably. Then Brittany smiled tightly. "Of course, Dorothy, whatever makes you comfortable." But I saw the tension in her eyes. She knew something had shifted. That night I sat by the fire again. The flames danced, the wood crackled. I held the deed in my lap. The path ahead was not clear yet, but I knew one thing with certainty. I was not finished, not erased, not invisible. The house, the tradition, the truth, they were mine to guard, mine to reveal. Thanksgiving was still coming, and the real story had only just begun. Morning light spilled across the dining room table. Empty plates from the planner's still cluttered corners. The candlesticks remained where I had left them. I traced their silver stems with steady fingers. "You will shine again," I whispered quietly. After breakfast, I opened Harold's desk drawer. Inside were envelopes, letters, business cards collected. I pulled out the lawyer's number Harold trusted. My hand shook as I dialed. A warm voice answered, calm and certain. "This is Patricia Hall. How can I help?" Patricia had once been Harold's colleague. Sharp, dependable, a woman who never backed down. "Patricia, this is Dorothy Whitfield," I said. "I need to ask you about property rights." Her tone sharpened instantly with attention. "Dorothy, what happened? Tell me everything." I told her the truth in pieces. The 30 guests, the party, the demand, the whispers about me staying upstairs hidden. Silence stretched for a moment over the line. Then Patricia's voice came firm and clear. "Dorothy, this is your house, your legal right. No one can exile you in your own home." She promised to come by next week. She would help me prepare if needed. When I hung up, a weight lifted. For the first time, I felt not alone. That afternoon, Brittany arrived with flowers, bright lilies arranged perfectly in tall glass. She placed them on my grandmother's table. "Lovely, right, Dorothy?" she asked brightly. Her smile was wide, but her eyes calculating. I forced myself to smile back. "They are pretty," I said evenly. Inside, I thought of Patricia's promise. Strength steadied me, though Brittany did not notice. Later, Michael found me in the kitchen. He leaned against the counter, weary and quiet. "Mom Brittany is trying her best," he murmured. "She wants things to be perfect." I turned from the sink slowly. Perfect for who, Michael? For family or for her followers? He flinched, rubbing his temple tiredly. "It can be both," he whispered. I studied his face, searching for truth. But I only saw a boy torn apart. That night, I lit the fireplace alone. The crackle of logs soothed my heavy heart. I pulled the deed from under my pillow. I laid it flat across the coffee table. The ink shone faintly under firelight. Whitfield Estate, Concord, Massachusetts. Owner Dorothy May Whitfield. This was more than paper. It was armor history, undeniable fact. I folded it carefully and placed it back. Soon, it would serve its purpose. The next morning, I baked bread. The smell of yeast filled every hallway again. It felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Neighbors stopped by to drop small gifts. A pie from Eleanor Patterson cranberry jam from Joan. They lingered surprised to see me baking. Dorothy, we thought Brittany was handling everything. I smiled faintly, brushing flour from my hands. Some traditions are not so easily erased. Their eyes softened with warmth, with understanding. They promised to visit during the holiday. Hope flickered in my chest like firelight. Not everyone had forgotten me. By afternoon, Brittany stormed into the kitchen. She wrinkled her nose at the flour dust. Dorothy the chef is bringing bread anyway. You do not need to tire yourself. I met her gaze steadily this time. I enjoy baking. I always have. She hesitated, clearly unsettled by my firmness. Well, just make sure it does not interfere. Her heels clicked sharply as she left, but for once her words did not sting. I felt stronger than her dismissal. That evening, I wrote in my journal. The pages filled with memories of Thanksgivings past, recipes, laughter, Harold's voice, Michael's boyhood joy. I ended with one clear sentence. They will not erase me. I closed the journal, firmly setting it aside. The house groaned softly in agreement. The following morning, I visited the attic. Dust swirled in golden beams of sunlight. Boxes towered against the walls, filled with history. I opened one, carefully sneezing at the dust. Inside were letters from Harold's parents, invitations to Thanksgiving dinners from 1930s, menus, handwritten notes about who attended. Each paper was proof a legacy unbroken. I gathered them, stacking neatly into a folder. This would join the deed as my evidence. By evening, I was exhausted but lighter. I brewed chamomile tea and sat quietly. The fire hummed the house, breathing with me. I thought again of my grandmother, her hands kneading dough during the Depression, her voice singing hymns during wartime Thanksgivings. She had never given up her table, and neither would I. Thanksgiving was still days away, but already the battle lines were drawn. The house was mine, the tradition was mine, and I was ready to fight for both. The days moved closer to Thanksgiving. The house grew louder, fuller, heavier with strangers. Trucks arrived with boxes of glassware and lights. Voices echoed through the halls like a busy hotel. My footsteps were drowned by clattering equipment below. I watched from the landing, silent and unseen. They arranged flowers, staged furniture, moved history aside. My grandmother's portrait leaned against a hallway wall. The candlestick still stood, but barely defended. Every corner of the house screamed of invasion. Brittany directed with a polished smile. She wore silk blouses and carried endless clipboards. Her words snapped like commands to waiting assistants. Michael followed phone, glued to his ear. He nodded at vendors, avoided my eyes again. I stood in the kitchen doorway quietly. The chef chopped onions with careless hands. He tossed peels into my grandmother's china bowl. "Stop," I said, my voice sharp. "Not that bowl. It is not for scraps." He froze, surprised at my firmness. "Sorry," he muttered, switching to stainless steel. For once, someone listened. For once, my words still mattered. Later that afternoon, the doorbell rang. Eleanor Patterson stepped inside with her cane. Her eyes scanned the crowded hallway in dismay. "Dorothy, what on earth is happening here?" I hugged her quickly, whispering low. "They want to erase me, Eleanor." Her face tightened with fire. "Not while I am breathing," she said. She sat with me in the parlor. Together we watched the chaos spread downstairs. "Do not worry," she said firmly. "When the moment comes, I will stand." Her words steadied me like warm bread. I showed her the deed and letters. Her eyes gleamed with fierce approval. "Good," she said, holding the papers tightly. "This is your weapon, Dorothy. Keep it safe until the right time." I tucked the folder beneath the cedar chest, close to my bed, hidden from sight. That night, I slept lighter, heart steadier. For the first time, I dreamed of victory. The next morning, Brittany cornered me. She wore red lipstick, her phone recording. "Dorothy, can you greet the camera quickly? Say how proud you are of this party." She angled the lens toward my face. I lifted my chin, staring into it. "This is not a party," I said. "This is my family's Thanksgiving tradition." Her smile faltered, her hand shaking slightly. She ended the recording without another word. Behind her, Michael looked startled. I held his eyes for once. He looked away, ashamed, conflicted. By midday, tension pulsed through every hallway. Assistants whispered when I entered rooms. The chef avoided my gaze while cooking. Only the candlesticks stood tall, polished, waiting. I touched them like soldiers before battle. The storm was gathering, heavy and inevitable. That evening, Patricia Hall arrived. Her gray coat brushed snow from the porch. Her presence filled the foyer with authority. "Dorothy, she said you look strong today." I led her upstairs to the study. We spread papers across Harold's old desk. The deed, the letters, the photographs. She nodded slowly, her eyes sharp. "This is enough. More than enough." She leaned closer, her voice steady. "When the guests arrive, let them see truth. Do not hide, do not shrink." Her hand covered mine briefly. "Dorothy, you have more power than you think." After she left, I stood by the window. Snow drifted across the dark Massachusetts street. The house hummed beneath my feet like a drum. Downstairs, Brittany rehearsed her speech for guests. Her voice floated upward, bright and hollow. Michael's voice followed softer, uncertain. I pressed my hand against the glass. "This house belongs to me. Tomorrow they will know it too." Later in bed, I clutched Harold's photograph. I whispered into the quiet night. "The storm is here, Harold, but I am ready to face it." The house creaked as if in agreement. The wind howled through the trees outside. Thanksgiving was only hours away, and the fight for my place had begun. Thanksgiving morning broke with cold gray skies. The house smelled of turkey herbs roasting vegetables. Downstairs, Brittany orchestrated like a general. Assistants rushed plates, polished silver, arranged flowers. Michael moved between rooms, his face drawn. I stood at the top of the stairs. My heart pounded, but my steps were steady. This was my house, my day, my test. By noon, cars filled the driveway. Engines shut off, doors slammed. Voices rose. 30 guests swept into my ancestral home. They wore sleek coats, carried expensive handbags. Phones flashed as selfies captured polished corners. I remained upstairs, waiting, listening carefully. Brittany's laughter rang like clinking champagne glasses. "Welcome to our Thanksgiving," she said brightly. "Our home is your home tonight." I gripped the stair rail tightly. Our home, she called it. Heat surged through me like fire. It was time. At 6, dinner began in the dining room. The turkey glistened golden beneath crystal chandeliers. Wine glasses sparkled in the candlelight. Guests raised their phones to capture everything. Brittany posed at the head of table. Michael sat stiffly by her side. No mention of me, no chair waiting for me. My chest ached, but my legs moved. I stepped into the hallway, then the dining room. Conversation froze. Knives clattered onto plates. 30 heads turned toward me. Brittany's smile faltered instantly. "Dorothy, what are you doing here?" I straightened my shoulders, voice clear. "This is my home, my family's home." Gasps rippled across the table. Someone whispered, "Is she the mother?" "Yes," I said firmly, "I am the mother. I am the keeper of this tradition." Brittany's cheeks flushed deep crimson. "Dorothy, please, you are embarrassing us." I stepped closer to the table. "No, Brittany, you are embarrassing yourself." I reached for the candlesticks beside me. These have stood on this table for generations. They belong here as I do. Michael finally rose from his chair, his face, pale eyes darting between us. "Mom, please sit down upstairs," he pleaded. I shook my head slowly. "Not this year, Michael. Not anymore." I pulled the folder from my bag. The deed, the letters, the photographs. I laid them across the tablecloth. Every guest leaned forward, stunned. This house belongs to me. This tradition belongs to my family. Silence filled the room like thunder. Judge Morrison's voice broke the silence. She had slipped in quietly moments earlier. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said clearly, "Dorothy Whitfield is not just a guest. She is the rightful owner of this home." Guests gasped again, phones lowered instantly. One man whispered, "So Brittany lied." Brittany's eyes widened, her breath quickening. She tried to laugh, to wave it off. Well, technically, she began nervously. I cut her off firm and steady. Not technically, legally, historically, undeniably. I turned to the guests directly. For 45 years, I cooked every Thanksgiving here. I welcomed family, neighbors, even strangers at the door. This house remembers, and I will not be erased. Several guests nodded, their faces softening. A young woman whispered, "She deserves respect." Brittany's voice cracked sharply. "This is not fair, Dorothy." I looked at her without anger. Fairness is earned by truth, not pretenses. Michael lowered his head, shame heavy. I saw tears gather in his eyes. The room swirled with whispers, questioned stares. Spotlight had shifted. Control had slipped from Brittany's hands. I lifted the candlesticks once more. Their flames flickered in the silent room. Thanksgiving is not about content or image. It is about gratitude, family, and history. My voice did not shake anymore. My words landed sharp, undeniable, unmovable. For a long moment, silence hung heavy. Then a guest slowly began to clap. Others followed until the room filled with applause. Brittany stood, frozen cheeks, burning eyes glassy. Michael sank back into his chair, defeated. But me, I stood tall, for the first time not invisible. The storm had broken, and the truth stood clear in its light. Applause still echoed through the dining room. The candlesticks glowed flames, steady and strong. Brittany stood, frozen lipstick trembling on her lips. Her phone dangled useless in her manicured hand. Guests whispered to each other quickly, eyes darting. "Is this really her house?" someone asked softly. "Yes," another replied. "You heard the judge. It belongs to Dorothy, not Brittany." Brittany's smile collapsed into a thin line. She tried to regain control, her voice shaking. "Everyone please sit," she said nervously. "Let us enjoy dinner. No need for drama." But the guests were restless, uncertain. Their eyes turned back toward me. I stood taller, my heart pounding hard. This was no longer Brittany's stage. Michael rubbed his forehead with both hands. His voice cracked as he finally spoke. "Mom, I am sorry," he whispered. "I should never have let this happen." The room stilled at his words. Even Brittany gasped, turning toward him sharply. "Michael, what are you doing?" she hissed. "You are making this worse." But Michael shook his head slowly. "No, Brittany, I am making it right." Judge Morrison's voice cut through the tension. "You cannot erase 45 years of tradition. Respect belongs to those who earned it." Her words struck like a gavel in court. Several guests nodded, murmuring in agreement. I felt tears sting my eyes. For once, someone spoke my truth aloud. Brittany slammed her phone onto the table. "Fine," she snapped. "Let Dorothy have her spotlight." But influencers do not care about dusty traditions. A young man stood suddenly, frowning deeply. "My grandmother taught me Thanksgiving values," he said. "What you call dusty, I call sacred." Others chimed in, voices rising together. "Family matters more than photographs," one woman said. "Real memories are worth more than likes." The tide had shifted completely. Brittany's empire of image crumbled in minutes. She pushed back her chair angrily. "If you all want old-fashioned, fine," she barked. "I am leaving. Enjoy your turkey." Gasps erupted as she stormed from the room. Her heels echoed against the hardwood angrily. The front door slammed with finality. The silence that followed was deafening. Michael buried his face in his hands. When he finally looked up, tears shone. "Mom, forgive me," he whispered brokenly. "I forgot who I was, who you are." I reached across the table slowly. I took his trembling hand in mine. We sat like that mother and son. The guests watched quietly, moved by the moment. Then Judge Morrison rose with steady dignity. "Ladies and gentlemen, let us give thanks, not just for food, but for truth." She lifted her glass high. "To Dorothy Whitfield, keeper of tradition." Every guest raised their glass in turn. The sound of crystal filled the room. For the first time in years, I felt wholly seen, wholly honored. Dinner resumed with laughter and warmth. Guests asked me about recipes and history. They wanted stories, not Brittany's staged perfection. I spoke of cranberry sauce from scratch. I told them about blizzards and candlelit dinners. I shared how Harold carved turkeys with jokes. Each word stitched me back into the table. Each memory restored my rightful place. The turkey tasted richer that night, the pies sweeter, the bread softer, warmer. Because food means little without respect beside it, and tonight respect had returned to my table. The table glowed with warmth and laughter. Candles flickered shadows dancing against the walls. Guests leaned in asking for recipes and stories. They listened not for content, but for connection. Michael sat beside me, eyes still red. He held my hand, never letting go. Mom, I forgot what Thanksgiving really meant. It is not about clients or cameras. It is about you, about us, about home. His words healed wounds deeper than years. I shared one more story from long ago, the year Harold carved the turkey backwards. Everyone laughed until tears streamed down. Laughter filled the dining room again, not staged, not forced, but real. That was the true feast. When dessert was served, silence fell briefly. Guests waited as I lifted my glass. For 45 years, I carried this tradition. I feared it would die with me, but tonight proves it is still alive. Tradition is not chains, it is roots. Roots that hold us steady through storms. Roots that let branches reach toward tomorrow. The guests raised their glasses again. To Dorothy, they shouted warmly to Thanksgiving. Later, when the plates were cleared, I walked slowly through each quiet room. The house felt lighter, brighter, alive again. The candlesticks still flickered steady and proud. The deed rested upstairs, but no longer heavy. I no longer needed proof to feel whole. I belonged, and the house knew it. Michael approached quietly at the stairwell. Mom Brittany may not come back, he said. She does not understand, maybe she never will. I touched his cheek gently. Son, people can change if they choose, but even if she does not, we remain. Family is not perfection, it is perseverance. And we still have time to learn. Tears welled in his eyes again. He hugged me tightly, whispering, "Thank you, Mom." When the last guest left that night, I stood at the window watching snow fall. Each flake landed softly on the dark street. Inside the house breathed with quiet peace. For the first time in years, so did I. Thanksgiving had been nearly stolen from me, but truth, courage, and tradition held the table. This is what I want you to remember. Family can hurt you with silence and pride, but truth always finds its way to light, and love can rebuild what pride tried to destroy. If you carry traditions, hold them proudly. If you are alone, remember you still matter. Do not let anyone erase your place, because your story, your roots, your truth, they are the gift the world needs most. Family can hurt you, but truth always wins. Love can heal what pride has broken. Share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe for more true family stories.